A lot of us suffer with imposter syndrome. We put ourselves down. We're harder to ourselves than we really need to be. But you should be your own best advocate. And if you really want something, put yourself out there, go for it. So the strategy is not a one and done, but a living, breathing, evolving mechanism.
So in today's episode, I'm going to sit down and talk to Kathryn, who is an author and fractional CMO. We're going to walk through how to build a marketing strategy for a brand new company, how to deal with clients as a fractional CMO, and Kathryn will share with us all of her ups and downs in her marketing career so far. If you're in middle management at the moment, we're going to touch on how to build teams under you and how to manage them well so your juniors and interns will stay motivated and they get to learn a lot from you as a manager. This episode will be packed with real life examples and clear tips how to help you to become a better chief marketing officer in the future. And let's get into the episode. Kathryn, how are you?
Good. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I'm super stoked that you're on the show. I was very happy to meet you at Indie SEO conference. And I think I'm going to see you at other events as well. And I know you are a successful marketer as well as a fractional CMO. So today we're going to dive into your career path and your tips and tricks, what to share with other aspiring CMOs. So would you like to introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your journey so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everybody. It's awesome to be here. I am Kathryn Strachan. I am a fractional CMO, but I haven't always been. So I started my career as a copywriter, and my freelance copywriting business grew into an agency called Copy House. So I ran an agency, content marketing agency called Copy House for 5 years. We specialized in complex industries. So we worked across fintech, financial services, insurance, kind of more of those drier, duller, more complex industries. But I started that agency from the ground up and scaled it into a 32-person agency with over 2 million turnover and then sold it. So I exited the agency in August. I knew that exit was coming, so about a year before that, started working as a fractional CMO. I am still working as a fractional CMO today. I've worked with several really exciting clients, and I have a new one onboarding very soon as well. So I am a fractional CMO. I have a book called Scaling Success, How to Build Brands That Break Barriers, available on Amazon. And I also have my own podcast called Marketers Unleashed, which you can listen to on Spotify.
Exactly. I'm going to link all of your books and podcasts and resources down in the description so everyone can check it out and learn more from you. It's pretty incredible that you've been able to scale a copywriting business, especially that I've been into the content management a lot, and it's a hard job, like getting content researched and then written and quality checked. And when you were running Content House, what was your best and worst client? Could you share with us that personal story?
Yeah, I mean, we worked with a lot of clients. So, I mean, I don't know that there was one that was particularly bad, but it is quite a problem when a client doesn't have a larger marketing strategy. So you can't do those more finer strategies, social, PR, content, if you don't have a larger marketing strategy. And a lot of brands think, oh, I want to raise brand awareness. Let's do some PR or, get our content going. And while those are probably things that you are going to do, you do need your larger marketing strategy first. So, I mean, the more difficult clients tended to be clients that didn't have that strategy in place yet, or clients who didn't fully realize the value of marketing. So after a while, we stopped working with startups, especially because a lot of startups don't yet understand the value of marketing. And not all startups, some startups get it, some are ahead of the curve. But typically, when you're that early on and that founder driven, you don't tend to understand the value of the more long-term activations like brand building, which does take 6 to 12 months to actually do and get going and, start seeing the results and the momentum from. So when you're very early on, you want results like today, you need, to hit sales targets or, you're not thinking long-term yet. You're still very much in the weeds. So those startups were, difficult clients to work with, and to the point that we eventually stopped working with clients who had that mindset and clients that didn't have a larger marketing strategy. So as we grew, we started to focus more on larger clients who A, had a marketing strategy, B, had a dedicated dedicated marketing person in place who we could coordinate with. And we're certainly out of that like startup stage. So, I mean, that was a natural part of our evolution, but those clients tended to be the most difficult.
Yes, it's very hard to have all the marketing elements in place. And now that I joined a bigger company as a marketing leader too, I find it like, wow, this is super overwhelming, even though I wanted this role and I was like thriving for this role. But I found it like there's a lot of elements, a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces. And how do you kind of overcome these challenges when there's a lot of things going on? Always need another person, but then we always need to justify a bit budget. How do you kind of, would you advise for other marketers who go through the same thing?
Yeah. I mean, when you start a new role, there's always kind of a backup. So it's always really overwhelming at first because there's like 1,000 things that need to get done like immediately. And at that point, it's really about creating priorities. So what needs to get done today? What can wait till next week? What can wait till next month? And, creating a clear priority because you can't do everything all at once. So you need to know what to do and when you need to do it. And then it's about creating really good processes and systems for getting stuff done. And, once you get those processes and systems in place, it's then a lot easier to control, to manage, to run it how it should be run. But yeah, I mean, when you first start and there's not those processes and systems in place, especially if they haven't had a senior marketing person before, then it is a bit of a mess, and it can almost feel like trying to wiggle a live snake onto the ground and like get it under control. But you do get it there.
Yeah, yeah. So setting priorities and creating SOPs and like even just, not even SOPs, just like a really clear system of when, what, why. Yeah, I mean, those are one thing, but I guess it's like a human element too, where you need everyone on the same page as you. I think you mentioned that at the Indie SEO conference, where one of your challenges is like just making sure everybody gets things done or like people understand what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes back to the strategy. I mean, so when you first start, you probably don't have a strategy in place. So getting, a priority list and then, getting some systems in place is a good starting point. But then you need to build a marketing strategy. So building a marketing strategy is then going to be your North Star of where you're going, where you're headed. And that then makes it a lot easier to decide what fits into that. So when a new request from sales or I don't know, any department comes through, you can then look at the strategy and be like, does this align with who we want to target? Does this align with how we want to position ourselves? Does this align with where we're going? And then you're much better able to decide yes or no, or, okay, this is going to wait. And, having that roadmap then tells you what you need to do on the way. So sometimes as well, there'll be requests that your marketing's not quite ready to do yet. So, I mean, you're probably, if you've only just started, probably don't have a massive audience around it, which then means that hosting, your own conference and getting, 2,000 people into a room is probably going to be a bit of a stretch for the company. So a lot of companies often want to like run before they can walk, but yeah, it's about setting the foundations and, leading them on a journey. And, you do have to walk before you can run. You can't just skip ahead. Those results that you want to see, that you see your competitors achieving and hitting, they're hitting it because they did what I'm telling you to do 6 months ago. So we do this now, and in 6 months we'll be there. But there's no shortcut to success. You can't just jump ahead because you feel like it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Marketing is also one of those things where like it's a compounding effect. So like you don't just get a bunch of leads by doing one thing. Like you do need to do continuously. You need to show up every day, almost like going to the gym. And people
It's
just
about momentum.
Yeah.
And
Momentum,
building momentum. And, you can't get momentum from, publishing one article or posting on social once. I mean, it takes time. I describe it a bit like being at the top of the hill and packing a snowball. You pack that snowball and you push it. And at first you have to push it quite a lot, but as it gets bigger, it creates its own momentum. So it continues to go and grow and grow and grow, and it becomes a lot easier to sustain that momentum once you have it up and running. But the hardest part of getting that momentum is packing the snowball in the first place. So you do have to see it as a journey, and you do have to commit to, doing this long term. So, you can't just do 1 month of blog content and then call it a day. You have to do it every single month for 6 months to a year before you really start to see good results from it.
Yeah.
A lot of, especially startups, tend to be very impatient and like, oh, we didn't get results from that one article, so we're going to switch it up. Like, well, no, wait, keep going, keep doing it and wait. And, we're going to look at the results and we're going to monitor the results, but we're not going to make any massive changes to strategy for the first 6 months.
Hi, if you listen to this far, thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave me a review on either Apple Podcast, Spotify, or my YouTube channel. If you have any feedback for the show, please let me know on the Aspiring CMO Podcast social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, or send me an email on my website. Now, let's get back to the episode. Yeah? So one of my questions here prepared too is like one of the mistakes that people tend to make, in your opinion, but it seems like switching their minds and just not really sticking to the plan. Is that would you say it's like one of the mistakes people make?
Yeah. And being very inward focused. So it tends to happen through like founder led companies is the founder thinks, or the founder's niece or the founder's wife or whoever thinks that something is a good idea. That's not necessarily a good idea. It needs to be backed with who your audience is. So just because you want to sponsor a big sports event does not mean that your audience enjoys those big sports events and you'll even reach them by doing that. So there needs to be more of a focus on your audience and building relationships with the people who you actually want to sell to, and less of a focus on yourself. This comes through in many ways. It comes through in being overly focused on the features of what your product does rather than like the benefits. That's a really common thing that happens with technology companies is they're obsessed with the what it does. They've spent months and years sometimes building a specific feature, so they want to tell the world about it, but the world doesn't actually care about it. They care about the benefits that it will bring. They care about like how it's going to make their lives better. So quite often one of the problems with people who don't necessarily understand marketing or, are very founder led and driven is that they're very inward focused. So what do I care about? I care about this feature. I care about this campaign. I think I would like this campaign, but you're not selling to yourself. You're selling to your audience. Your audience, if they were you, wouldn't need you. They need you because you bring something to their lives, to their companies, to their jobs that they don't currently have. So it's about connecting, understanding, and ultimately building relationships with your audience. And I think the biggest mistake that people make is thinking that it's a one-sided relationship. And that's a bit like going on a date and just talking about yourself. Like you're probably not going to get a second date. Probably definitely not going to get a second date if you go on a date and only talk about yourself and not ask them any questions, not show any interest in them whatsoever, and just talk about yourself. You're probably never going to see them again. And it's the same with your marketing.
Exactly. Well, thank you for sharing all that mistakes, because even leaders within an organization, they just focus on the product itself and they just want to sell and convince everyone that this feature is the best, and often forget like what actual feelings, and they forget what actual feelings it brings to the other person. Yeah. So normally for new SaaS companies, like how do you like start building a marketing strategy? Because SEOs now, they are going to either A, go into agency building, or B, start a SaaS business. And I see that with all the AI automations, it's really simple, not simple, but easier to start a software. For those companies, what are the key things that you would suggest as a fractional CMO to build their strategy?
Yeah. I always start by really immersing myself in the brand. I want to look at sales strategies, business strategies, what's the bigger vision for the company. These are really good places to start because your marketing strategy is going to need to basically mirror the business strategy. So, if you're planning to expand into a new market or do a lot of hiring, marketing will need to support that. If you're looking to acquire new customers, marketing is going to need to support that. So it's looking at like what the current strategies in place across the different business departments are. I then normally need to run a series of workshops to gather some of these insights and to create some of this analysis. Common workshops tend to be around like ICP, so you do really want to understand the audience. If they haven't done this work before, then we need to do it. If they have done this work before, perhaps it's, making sure that we're 100% still aligned and confirm that this is the audience that we want to look after. But it's also around things like your positioning. So how are you going to position yourself in the market, what's your how, your what, your why, and kind of making sure that we have all the core messaging in place. So there's a bit of internal introspection that needs to happen. And then there's also a piece of external analysis. So this is customer interviews, making sure that the assumptions that we're making when we create these ICPs are actually correct. It's a bit of market research, who are we competing with and what are they doing from a marketing perspective. So not a product perspective, because I'm not really very interested in like what they're doing from a product perspective. What I want to know is what they're doing from a marketing perspective and what we need to do to compete for our audience's attention. So what levers are they pulling? What do we need to pull those levers at? Well, what levers are they perhaps falling down on? And does that create an opportunity for us to gain a competitive advantage? Once I do this like external analysis, I can then take the internal, external, and create a strategy that then mirrors a business strategy and allows the company to achieve what they want to achieve. It's almost impossible to like pull off a business strategy without a strong marketing strategy behind it, because regardless of what you're doing, whether it's launching a new product, launching into a new market, hiring employees, like all of this is influenced by how people think about, perceive, and experience your brand. So marketing strategy really needs to mirror that. So it's quite a comprehensive process that normally takes at least 4 months to achieve. And then, of course, there needs to be feedback. The internal stakeholders are involved in these workshops, obviously, but then they also need to feedback on the strategy. So collecting the feedback from them and then taking that feedback and creating the next iteration of strategy. So strategy is never like completely finished when it is presented. It's maybe like 80% of the way there, and then it's a feedback, and it needs to be feedback across multiple departments within the company. It can't just be like the CRO's feedback, it needs to be from multiple people within senior stakeholders within the company that then feedback on the strategy, and then you finish it the rest of the way. Once that strategy is in place, it's about executing it. So a strategy is only a plan on paper. You then need to put it into action. So at that point, especially as a fractional CMO, my job is not necessarily to do the copywriting or to do the design, but to make sure that we have the right people to do that. So I have a really big network of agencies and freelancers, and even can help with internal hiring and recruitment to bring in the right people depending on what we need within that marketing strategy to execute it. So bringing in these partners, making sure that they're briefed in correctly, making sure that they have the tools and everything that they need to be able to do this, so they then can execute on the strategy that I've created, and then reviewing what they're doing and like making sure that what is happening is what needs to happen as aligned with the strategy, and then reviewing the results and taking these results and evolving the strategy. So strategy is basically a statement of what we know to be true at this time. But as we do these activities, we learn more about what's working with our audience, what's not working, what's working in the market, and we take these insights and we bring them back into the strategy. So the strategy is not a one and done, but a living, breathing, evolving mechanism.
I think you covered a lot of it here, but one thing that stood out to me the most is that you have the network of creatives and people who could help other businesses, because one of the biggest things I've seen is that companies just never have the good marketers in place. Marketers or designers, copywriters, and they would hire interns. Of course, they're interns, so they don't know what they're doing. That's their name. And I see multiple companies going down this road like, oh, just give it to, someone very, very inexperienced. But yeah, I noticed over time that having a network of creative people really helped me to grow my career too as a marketing leader, because I always knew who to, give the work to, and all of a sudden it was done. It was done well instead of done.
I think junior hires are a bit of a false economy. The brands often think, oh, I'm just going to bring on an intern or hire somebody junior because they're cheaper. But they're cheaper because they require a lot of hand-holding and don't have as much knowledge and expertise as somebody who's more senior. So in order for them to produce good results, they really need to be nurtured and developed and invested in. And what a lot of companies get wrong there is they just hire these interns or really junior people and then leave them to their own devices. apprentices. So they don't nurture them, they don't develop them, they don't invest in them. I mean, junior hires are a long-term investment. You bring them in, you nurture them, you develop them. Hopefully they stay with the business and you eventually end up with, a senior marketer. But it's a bit like, buying the yeast from the store to make bread, but then not buying any of the other ingredients. I mean, that yeast is
Yes,
going to get you nowhere, absolutely
exactly. Absolutely
nowhere.
nowhere. Yeah.
So, I
Yes.
mean,
Yes.
it really depends on the stage of the business that you're in, whether or not it's a good time to hire junior talent. So when I was running Coffee House, we eventually stopped hiring junior talent because we were so busy. We really needed people to come in and be able to hit the ground running from like day one. And a junior person isn't going to be able to do that. So with junior hires, it's more of a long term and you need to make sure that you have the right support in place. It really makes me upset when companies bring in junior people and don't give them that support and don't give them that development, because not only is it like not good for the company, but it's really bad for the junior person. They have a
Yeah.
terrible experience. They don't develop, they don't grow. They're either completely stagnated and they stay in that role because they're scared to go find anything else, or they have a really traumatic experience and then think that that role is, not where they should take their career path. But it's often the employer's fault because they brought them in and gave them no support, no development, and then just left them to their own devices. So it really upsets me when companies just think, oh, well, just take on an intern or junior person because they're cheaper. Well, yeah,
Yeah.
they're cheaper, but do you have the right support and systems in place to be able to nurture and develop them? Because if you hire anybody junior, whether it's in marketing or not, you have a duty to them to make sure that you do.
Correct. Correct. I can say that first-hand experience, my first ever marketing job. I was super inexperienced. I was really just looking for like a job that could pay me just enough, to get by, but like to give me the experience of a marketer. And yeah, I was like, whatever you just described, all of that was me. I never gave up on the career path. So I did like marketing at the end of the day. I didn't get so traumatized that I don't come back to marketing, but it was definitely like a big lesson for me that anytime somebody will be hired under me, I'll make sure that I provide as many things for them to learn as possible. So I think I recently I hired an intern for my podcast, and I even bought her a Canva and a CapCut course because it's a very essential skill to run a show like this. And I was like, man, I don't have the time to teach you all these basic things, but I pay you this course. Watch this and learn from it. And yeah, you can do like one episode a month or whatever. But yeah, sometimes these experiences can make other marketers better, but of course some of these experiences can just turn people down so badly and just cause a lot of mental trouble to those juniors or interns if you're not handling them well. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a really terrible thing that you
Hmm.
see in the industry, but I don't think it's just marketing. I mean, it's the case for
Oh
any
yeah, that's
junior
everywhere.
hire across any department. I mean, you need to
Yeah.
support them and develop them and like make sure you have the right systems and processes in place. And, it needs to be more about just cutting costs and, really focused on, is this the right person for us at this time? Is this hire going to get us where we want to go?
Correct. Yes. As a fractional CMO too, how do you divide your time between clients, or do you only take one client at a time? As you described, the initial stage of a marketing strategy does take a long time and it's very in-depth research. How does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah. I mean, so I only take on 2 clients at a time. I do know fractionals that take on 4 or 5, and, I probably could do that within my schedule, but I'm recovering from burnout at the moment from having run the agency. So, I mean, I'm much less stressed than I was when I left the agency, when I was
That's
working
amazing.
when I was running the agency, because it was my own company. I was working, 80, 90 hours a week. And at the moment, my focus is more on my mental health and my family than it
Yeah.
is on work,
That's
which needs.
100% spot on. Like, thank you for bringing up mental health and, taking care of your friends and family too. It's just as important as work. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a 7-year-old daughter who needs
Oh,
my
what is your...
needs my attention. So I am not working as much as I could be. But so at the moment, I'm only taking on 2 clients at a time. And then I also have a third client, which is myself, because I spend a lot of time investing in my own marketing. So I have my own podcast, I have my book launch that I need to do a lot of of promotion around. And then I have my own personal brand. So I have 18,000 followers on LinkedIn. So I see myself as a client as well. And I make sure that I am investing in my book and my podcast and my personal brand to the same level as I'm investing in my clients. So
That's
I split my
amazing.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I split my time between two clients and my personal brand. And then, that allows me to make sure that I'm not overworking and that I'm spending a lot of time with my family. I'm spending a lot of time traveling and just enjoying life a whole lot more than I used to.
Amazing. I think your journey has shown us aspiring CMOs like what a great journey is. I mean, I don't recommend burning out, of course. Like I believe that burnout should be prevented, but I think your journey had shown like a lot of steps ahead to future marketers and current marketers as well. My final question on this show, as we're coming to the end, is what is your number one advice for aspiring CMOs?
I think my final piece of advice would be to just go for it. I mean, a lot of us suffer with imposter syndrome, or, we put ourselves down, we're harder to ourselves than we really need to be, but you should be your own best advocate. And if you really want something, put yourself out there, go for it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You might get a no, that person might say no to coffee, or you might get rejected from a role, but, you're not going to be any worse off than you are right now, having not gone for it. So I guess my number one piece of advice would be to go for it, put yourself out there, ask for that coffee, ask for that chat, ask for that role or that promotion, but, go for it because you deserve to dream big.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kathryn. And where can we see you next? What conference are you planning this year?
So I'm speaking next week, actually, at an event in Scotland. But the best place to catch me is on my LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn, listen to my podcast, Marketers Unleashed, on Spotify, or buy my book, Scaling Success, How to Build Brands That Break Barriers, on Amazon.
Thank you so much, Kathryn, and everyone. I'm linking all of these down in the description. So if you lost, just go down and check it out. All right. I'll see you soon, Kathryn. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.